An outboard motor is a great way to get from point A to point B quickly and effortlessly. The outboard motor is ideal if you got a long distance between your launch and where you want to fish, or you want to cover a lot of ground between fishing spots and want to do that quickly without without taking up a lot of energy. So the outboard motor is a great solution for that. It does come with a lot of questions though. The outboard motors generate a lot of phone calls, emails, inquiries about various aspects. So we're going to address those today in this outboard motor FAQ. So I already touched on why an outboard motor is great. Getting from point A to point B quickly and effortlessly. It's not as good for trolling, for slow speeds, for maneuvering, for trying to navigate while you're fishing or in and around tight areas, because control in tight areas and navigation is not really its strength. So really it's for covering ground, covering a lot of distance. The outboard motors are currently compatible with the Frontier 12, the F10, and the Classics. Those are the models for which our outboard motor bracket will fit. We have used it on and can be comfortable with. I know there's some people using it on the Pursuit. That's fine. Haven't seen anybody put an outboard motor on a Flint yet. It's probably happened. But we don't have the outboard motor brackets for those. We haven't really tested those out, so we're not going to focus on those at this point with the outboard motors. Popular question is, what type of motor should I get, and what motor's best? Well, you're going to want a motor that's up to 2.5 horsepower, so 2 to 2.3 is pretty common. A 20-inch shaft is ideal with the new outboard motor bracket. So up to 2.5 horsepower, 20-inch shaft, those are kind of the key parameters. This motor here weighs 30 pounds. Anything in that 30 to 40 pound range will be just fine on the transom. As far as what motor is best, we don't really have a recommendation or endorsement of one motor over another. We have used this Honda 2.3 horsepower air-cooled motor. It's worked really well for us, easy to control, runs nicely, pretty quiet. So we're very happy with this motor. We have not used it extensively, put a lot of hours on it to know how it holds up over time, but so far so good with the Honda 2.3. But there are a number of motors out there that could work great and will work great. So the best thing to do would be check with your NuCanoe dealer if they offer motors, or check with your local motor dealer to learn about different motor types. Next up, we're going to cover setup and control. So the two things we definitely recommend, first is the number 7102 outboard motor bracket that's going to clamp onto the transom, give you this raised up part here that's narrower for the motor to clamp onto. It's going to protect your transom. Also has the little lip on top so the motor cannot accidentally slide up and off. Next up is the tiller extension handle. We definitely recommend this, as it allows you to sit pretty much anywhere you'd want to sit and control the motor. So if you're going solo, you're going to want that seat pretty far forward. You're going to want to have your weight trimmed out evenly, so sitting further forward will keep the bow down while the motor's engaged. You can extend out that handle really long, you can see that. And then the beauty of the 360 seat, turn that seat about 45 degrees, one hand on the tiller extension handle, you got great control, you're comfortable, you're cruising along, works great. Now if you want to go tandem, simply shorten up the tiller extension handle, slide that rear seat back to the back. I wouldn't go all the way back. You'd want to, again, try to cheat forward for weight distribution, but bring that back where you can easily control it, take advantage of the 360 mobility, and then add the second seat in up at the front. So that covers kind of setup and control for solo and tandem use. Now some key tips for using a motor. First, always wear your PFD. Have it on, have it secured. You never know what's going to happen when you're out on the water. Second, keep your scuppers plugged. With the motor, the transom sits a little bit lower. When it gets engaged, it can tend to draw water in. So just keep the scuppers plugged when you're using the outboard motor. Third, always check your weight distribution. Make sure you're trimmed out evenly. You don't want the transom riding too low, the bow riding too high. Fourth, use the little safety clip. Connect it to your PFD. That way, worst case scenario, go for a swim, then the motor and the boat don't take off without you. That'll kill the motor. And that's also really the best way to kill the motor when you're just out on the water and want to turn it off and start fishing. Fifth, when you get going, get the motor up and you're ready to go, just start slowly. Twist the throttle handle gently. kind of ease up to speed, to a good cruising speed. Which leads us into a very popular question, is how fast can I go with an outboard motor? Well, with this outboard, the 2.3 on the Frontier 12, we've comfortably got in the 5-mile-an-hour range. I think topped out at 5.8 or so. Now, you'll find that when you get to 5.5, using more power above that doesn't really give you a lot more speed. So a good kind of top cruising speed is right in that 5-mile-an-hour range. If you really try to go full throttle, it's louder, you're moving more water, but not necessarily going faster. Get a lot of questions from people saying, can I use a motor larger than a 2.5? I mean, you can do whatever you want on one hand, but officially we can't recommend anything over a 2.5, as that's what the boat's rated for. And if you have any encounters with your local officials or Department of Licensing or such out on the water, they're not going to probably like the larger motor than it's rated for. That said, if you're not using more than equivalent of 2 horsepower or so, 2.5 horsepower, and it's in that 30 to 40 pound range, you probably won't have any problems. Last up is just looking at, people ask, hey, can I put it on the Pursuit or the Flint, or will you have the outboard motor bracket for those other models? And we're going to try that out later this summer, put the outboard motor bracket on the Pursuit, see how it goes, put it on the Flint, see how it goes. And if it's something where we're comfortable with how it performs and that it's safe and we'll work well with those models, then we'll come out with an outboard motor bracket for those. Otherwise, we'll just stick with it for the Frontier models. So that's a wrap up of some of the most popular questions we get for outboard motors. If we didn't address your question, let us know and we'll get you an answer. But again, just to recap, the outboard motor is a great way to cover a lot of ground out on the water, to get from point A to point B quickly, effortlessly, and really maximize your time for fishing.